The message came through the Deep Space Relay at 0347 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Commander Sarah Chen was halfway through her third cup of coffee when the emergency beacon lit up her command console like a Christmas tree. The bridge of the UES Retribution fell silent as the distress call echoed through the speakers, translated from a dozen alien languages into crisp, urgent English. This is the Zephyrian Coalition speaking for the Outer Rim Defense Alliance. We are under attack by the Void Collective. Our worlds are burning. Our children are dying. We have held out for 3 months, but we cannot hold much longer. To anyone who can hear this message, we are begging for help. The Void has weapons we cannot comprehend. Technology that turns our very stars against us. If there is anyone out there who still believes in justice, in mercy, in the right to exist, please, help us. The transmission cut to static. Sarah set down her coffee cup with a hand that trembled slightly. In her 15 years as a fleet commander, she had never heard such raw desperation in a distress call. Lieutenant Morrison, confirm the transmission, she ordered, her voice steady despite the churning in her stomach. Confirmed, Commander. The signal originated from the Kepler 442 system, approximately 47 light-years from our current position. The encryption signatures match known Zephyrian communication protocols. Sarah stood and walked to the massive viewscreen that dominated the bridge's forward wall. Beyond the reinforced transparisteel, stars wheeled slowly as the Retribution maintained its patrol route along the Sol defense perimeter. Earth hung like a blue marble in the distance, peaceful and unaware of the cry for help that had just reached human ears. Open a channel to Fleet Command, Sarah said. Priority Alpha. Within minutes, Admiral Marcus Kane's weathered face appeared on the main screen. The old man's gray eyes were sharp as laser cutters, and his expression was grim. I heard it too, Sarah. Every ship in the fleet picked up that transmission. Sir, we have to respond. The Zephyrians have been our allies for over a century. They stood with us during the Proxima Rebellion. They shared their healing technology during the Plague Years. We can't just. Commander Chen, Kane interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of command. I want you to listen very carefully. The Void Collective isn't some ragtag pirate fleet. Our intelligence suggests they've been conquering systems for the better part of a decade. They have technology that can destabilize stars, Sarah. Stars. They turn entire solar systems into weapons. Sarah felt her jaw clench. With respect, sir, that's exactly why we need to act. If we let them finish off the outer rim, how long before they turn their attention to the core systems? How long before they come for Earth? Kane was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, more personal. Sarah, you're talking about taking the fleet into a war zone 47 light-years from the nearest human reinforcement. Against an enemy we don't understand, with weapons we can't defend against. The Zephyrians saved my daughter's life, Sarah said quietly. When the genetic plague hit the colony worlds, their medical ships were the first to respond. They lost thousands of their own people developing the cure. They didn't hesitate to help us when we needed it most. Kane's expression softened slightly. I know, Sarah. I know. But I have to think about humanity's survival. If we send the fleet and it's destroyed, Earth is defenseless. And if we don't send the fleet, and the Void Collective wins, Earth is doomed anyway. Sarah stepped closer to the screen. Sir, I'm not asking you to risk everything. But we have to do something. Send a fast response team. Gather intelligence. At least try to even the odds. The Admiral was quiet for nearly a minute. Sarah could hear the hum of the ship's engines, the soft beeping of instruments, the quiet breathing of her bridge crew. Finally, Kane nodded. Very well, Commander. I'm authorizing Operation Righteous Fury. Take the Third Fleet, 12 ships, including the Retribution. Your mission is reconnaissance and limited engagement. Do not, and I repeat, do not engage the full Void Collective force unless you have no choice. Gather intelligence, assist in evacuations if possible, and report back. Sarah felt her heart rate spike. Thank you, sir. We won't let you down. See that you don't. And Sarah? Come home safe. All of you. The channel closed, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and the weight of command. She turned to address her bridge crew, who had been listening intently to the exchange. You heard the Admiral. Lieutenant Morrison signaled the Third Fleet. We're going to war. The next 6 hours were a blur of activity. The 12 ships of the Third Fleet, 8 destroyers, 2 cruisers, and 2 dreadnoughts including the Retribution, gathered at the edge of the solar system. Supply ships delivered ammunition, medical supplies, and emergency rations. Engineers performed last-minute systems checks. Chaplains held services for those who wanted them. Sarah stood in the observation deck, watching the controlled chaos of preparation. The Retribution was humanity's newest and most powerful warship, a kilometer-long beast of metal and composite armor bristling with railguns, plasma cannons, and missile tubes. Its crew of 3,000 represented the best and brightest of the Solar Defense Force. Nervous, Commander? Sarah turned to find Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's chief medical officer, approaching with 2 cups of tea. Elena was a small woman with kind eyes and steady hands, exactly what you wanted in a combat medic. Terrified, Sarah admitted, accepting the tea gratefully. We're jumping into a war zone against an enemy we know almost nothing about. Our best intelligence says they have ships 3 times the size of our dreadnoughts and weapons that can turn stars into bombs. But we're going anyway, Elena said. It wasn't a question. Yes. We're going anyway. Elena nodded. Good. Because I've been to Zephyria Prime. I've seen their cities, met their people. They're not so different from us, you know. They love their children, they dream of the future, they laugh at bad jokes. They deserve a chance to survive. Sarah sipped her tea, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. What's our medical readiness? All 3 medical bays are fully stocked. I've got 30 doctors, 60 nurses, and enough supplies to treat severe casualties for 2 months. I've also prepared for unusual injuries. If the Void Collective really does have exotic weapons, we might see wounds we've never encountered before. Hopefully it won't come to that. Elena's expression was grim. It will, Sarah. You know it will. The question is whether we're ready for it. At 1800 hours, the Third Fleet made the jump to faster-than-light travel. The transition was smooth, a brief moment of disorientation as the ships entered subspace, then the eerie calm of FTL flight. At their maximum speed, the journey to Kepler 442 would take 18 hours. Sarah spent the time reviewing intelligence reports and tactical analyses. The Void Collective was a mystery wrapped in shadows and fear. They had appeared at the edge of the galaxy 7 years ago, conquering isolated systems with ruthless efficiency. Their ships were massive, dark constructs that seemed to absorb light itself. Their weapons were unlike anything in the known galaxy, energy beams that could destabilize matter at the molecular level, gravity weapons that could crush entire fleets, and the terrifying starkillers that could turn a system's sun into a supernova. But perhaps most disturbing were the reports of what happened to conquered populations. The Void Collective didn't just destroy, they converted. Entire species were somehow transformed into extensions of the Collective's will, their individuality erased, their bodies changed into something no longer recognizably alive. Commander, we're receiving another transmission from the Kepler system, Lieutenant Morrison announced. Sarah hurried to the bridge. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was weaker now, filled with static and desperation. This is High Admiral Kefvar of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet. If anyone is receiving this, the void has broken through our outer defenses. They're moving toward the inner worlds. We've lost contact with the Altarian colonies and the vegan trade stations. Our fleet is down to 37 ships. We're making our final stand at Zephyria Prime. We've received word that help might be coming. If that's true, please hurry. We may not have much time left. The transmission ended. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. ETA to the Kepler system, she asked. 16 hours, 43 minutes, Commander. 16 hours. Sarah hoped it would be enough. The Third Fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and what they found was a vision of hell. The outer worlds, 3 rocky planets that had been home to Zephyrian mining colonies, were gone. Not destroyed, but literally gone, leaving only expanding clouds of superheated gas and debris. The system's asteroid belt, once a thriving center of commerce and industry, was now a chaotic maze of shattered rock and twisted metal. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Morrison. "They really did it. They killed entire worlds." Sarah stared at the tactical display, her mind struggling to process the scale of the destruction. "Survivors? Scanning now, Commander. I'm detecting some life signs in the debris field. Looks like emergency shelters and escape pods. Several hundred at least. Signal the fleet. Begin immediate search and rescue operations. And get me a tactical assessment of the inner system." The results of the scan were both relieving and terrifying. The good news was that Zephyria Prime, the system's main inhabited world, was still intact. The bad news was that it was surrounded by the largest fleet of enemy ships Sarah had ever seen. "My God," breathed Commander Torres, captain of the heavy cruiser Vigilant. His voice came through the fleet communication channel with barely controlled fear. "There have to be over 200 ships out there. Some of them are. Commander, some of those ships are 20 kilometers long." Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities and strategies. The Void Collective fleet was indeed massive, sleek, dark vessels that seemed to drink in the light of the system's star. They were arranged in a loose sphere around Zephyria Prime, slowly tightening their grip on the world below. "What's the status of the Zephyrian defense fleet?" she asked. "I'm detecting 41 ships, all concentrated in high orbit around the planet. They're really beat up, Commander. Most of them are showing heavy damage. They're putting up a fight, but they're clearly outgunned." Sarah made her decision. "Fleet Command, this is Commander Chen. We're going to even the odds. All ships, prepare for combat. We're going in fast and hard hit-and-run tactics. Our job is to give the Zephyrians breathing room and buy time for evacuations." "Commander," came the concerned voice of Captain Park from the destroyer Defiant, "we're outnumbered 20-1. Our ships are tougher than anything the Zephyrians have, but against those numbers." "I know the odds, Captain," Sarah replied. "But we didn't come here to play it safe. We came here to help. All ships, jump to attack formation. Target the enemy vessels threatening the evacuation ships." The Third Fleet accelerated toward the battle, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. As they closed the distance, Sarah could see the desperate struggle playing out around Zephyria Prime. Zephyrian ships, elegant, crystalline vessels that looked like works of art, were fighting a running battle against the dark mass of Void Collective forces. Evacuation ships were fleeing the planet's surface, loaded with refugees, while the remaining defense fleet tried to cover their escape. "We're being targeted," reported Lieutenant Morrison. "Enemy vessels are changing course to intercept us." "Good," Sarah said grimly. "That means fewer ships shooting at the evacuees. All weapons, prepare to fire. Target the largest concentration of enemy vessels." The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness like a deadly fireworks show. Human railguns hurled tungsten projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, while plasma cannons sent streams of superheated gas toward the enemy fleet. The Void Collective responded with weapons Sarah had never seen before, beams of absolute darkness that seemed to erase whatever they touched, and strange projectiles that twisted space around them. "Direct hit on the enemy flagship," Morrison shouted. "No, wait, the damage is healing itself. The ship is literally rebuilding its hull." Sarah watched in fascination and horror as the enemy vessel's damaged sections flowed like liquid metal, sealing breaches and repairing destroyed weapon systems. "Adaptive armor," she murmured. "They're not just advanced, they're using technology we don't even understand." The Retribution shuddered as an enemy beam weapon struck its shields. The energy barriers flared and held, but Sarah could see the power levels dropping rapidly on her command display. "Shields down to 70%, reported Chief Engineer Malcolm Rodriguez over the calm. These weapons are eating through our defenses like they're made of paper. Then we'd better hit them before they can hit us, Sarah replied. Morrison, target that cluster of ships harassing the evacuation convoy. Fire everything we have. The Retribution's main battery opened fire, 6 massive railguns that could punch through the armor of any known warship. The tungsten slugs struck their targets with devastating force, and 3 enemy ships simply ceased to exist in brilliant flashes of light and debris. Yes! Morrison cheered. That showed them. But Sarah's celebration was short-lived. The debris from the destroyed ships began to move, flowing together like metallic liquid. Within minutes, the wreckage had reformed into 2 new vessels, smaller than the originals but clearly functional. They're rebuilding, she whispered. The ships aren't just self-repairing, they're regenerating from their own debris. The battle raged for 3 hours. The human fleet fought with desperate courage, their advanced weapons and superior training allowing them to hold their own against the numerically superior enemy. But slowly, inexorably, the Void Collective was gaining the upper hand. Human ships were taking damage faster than they could repair it, while the enemy vessels seemed to grow stronger with each engagement. Commander, came the voice of Captain Martinez from the destroyer Valiant, we've lost main power. We're sitting ducks out here. All ships, cover the Valiant's withdrawal, Sarah ordered. We need to regroup and reassess. But even as she spoke, Sarah knew they were in trouble. The Third Fleet had started with 12 ships. Now the destroyer Intrepid was drifting powerless, her crew evacuated to other vessels. The cruiser Vigilant was down to 20% power and couldn't maintain weapons fire. 3 other ships were reporting critical damage. It was then that help arrived from an unexpected source. Human fleet, this is High Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Defense Command. We're moving to support your position. Sarah looked up at the tactical display to see the surviving Zephyrian ships breaking away from their defensive positions around the planet. They were moving to join the human fleet, their crystalline hulls gleaming in the light of weapons fire. Admiral Kethvar, your priority should be protecting the evacuation, Sarah transmitted back. We can handle the collective. With respect, Commander Chen, came the reply, you cannot handle this alone. We have fought the Void for 3 months. We know their weaknesses. Together, we have a chance. The combined human Zephyrian fleet regrouped just outside the range of the main collective force. Sarah found herself on a 3-way video call with Admiral Kethvar and her own fleet commanders. The Zephyrian admiral was a tall, graceful being with pale blue skin and large, expressive eyes. His people were known for their wisdom and their deep connection to the natural world. The Void ships are not invincible, Kethvar explained, his voice carrying the weight of hard-won experience. They regenerate, yes, but the process requires enormous amounts of energy. If we can disrupt their power sources, we can prevent them from rebuilding. How do we do that? Asked Captain Torres. Their ships are powered by dark matter reactors, Kethvar replied. The same technology that allows them to manipulate space and time. But dark matter is unstable. If we can overload their reactors, we can cause cascade failures throughout their fleet. Sarah leaned forward. What kind of weapons do we need? Quantum torpedoes, Kethvar said. Weapons that can penetrate their defenses and deliver an antimatter payload directly to their reactor cores. Your people have the technology, we've seen your ship's specifications. But you'll need to get close. Very close. Sarah felt her stomach drop. How close? Point-blank range. Less than a kilometer. At that distance, their defensive systems won't be able to track the torpedoes. That's suicide, Captain Park said flatly. We'd have to fly right into their weapons range. Yes, Kethvar agreed simply. It is suicide. But it is also the only way to save both our peoples. Sarah looked around at her officers, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. They were being asked to sacrifice themselves for a chance, just a chance, to stop the Void Collective. It was madness. It was also the right thing to do. I'll do it, she said quietly. The Retribution is the toughest ship in the fleet. We can take more punishment than anyone else. Commander, no, Captain Torres protested. Let me take the Vigilant. She's already damaged. And that's exactly why you can't go, Sarah interrupted. You wouldn't make it halfway to the target. No, this is a job for the flagship. She turned to address the entire fleet. All ships, prepare for maximum engagement. We're going to give the Retribution covering fire while she makes her run. The next few minutes were a blur of preparation. The Retribution's crew worked with frantic efficiency, modifying their quantum torpedoes for maximum penetration and installing additional armor plating around the bridge and reactor compartments. The ship's chaplain, Father O'Brien, held a brief service for anyone who wanted to attend. Nearly half the crew showed up. Commander, Dr. Vasquez said, approaching Sarah in the armory where she was checking her personal weapons, I want to go with you on the attack run. Elena, I need you to stay with the fleet. If this goes wrong, they're going to need medical support. If this goes wrong, there won't be a fleet to support. Elena's voice was steady, but Sarah could see the fear in her eyes. Besides, if you're flying into the teeth of the enemy fleet, you're going to need a doctor. Your crew is going to need a doctor. Sarah wanted to argue, but she knew Elena was right. Okay. But stay in sickbay during the attack. No heroics. I'll leave the heroics to you, Commander. As the Retribution prepared for its suicide run, Sarah found herself thinking about Earth. About her daughter, Rebecca, who was starting her first year at the academy. About her ex-husband, Mark, who had never understood why she chose the military over a safe civilian career. About the billions of people who would never know that their lives might depend on what happened in the next few minutes. All ships, this is Commander Chen, she announced over the fleet communication channel. We're going to hit them hard and fast. The Retribution will punch through their lines and deliver the payload. I need everyone else to keep the pressure on, make them think we're trying to break through on all fronts. Roger that, Commander, came the chorus of replies from her captains. Give them hell. The attack began with a coordinated assault by the entire combined fleet. Human railguns and plasma cannons opened fire alongside Zephyrian energy weapons and gravity mines. The Void Collective fleet responded with their own devastating barrage, turning the space around Zephyria Prime into a deadly maze of energy beams and projectiles. The Retribution accelerated toward the enemy formation, her engines burning at maximum output. Sarah watched the tactical display as they closed the distance, 5 kilometers, 4, 3. Incoming! Morrison shouted. Multiple enemy vessels converging on our position. The ship shuddered as enemy fire struck the hull. Sarah felt the deck plates vibrate beneath her feet as the Retribution's armor absorbed the impact. Their shields were down to 30% and falling fast. 2 kilometers to target, reported the navigation officer. But we're not going to make it, Commander. Too much incoming fire. Sarah made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. All hands, prepare for ramming speed. We're going to punch through their lines no matter what it takes. The Retribution's engines screamed as they pushed past their safety limits. The ship's hull groaned under the stress, and Sarah could hear the sound of metal tearing somewhere in the lower decks. But they were accelerating, closing the gap with their target, a massive Void Collective vessel that had to be their command ship. 1 kilometer, Morrison reported. Torpedo tubes loaded and ready. Fire! Sarah commanded. The quantum torpedoes launched from the Retribution's forward tubes, their antimatter warheads glowing like miniature stars. They crossed the remaining distance in seconds, penetrating the enemy ship's hull and detonating deep within its core. The explosion was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. The Void Collective command ship didn't just blow up, it seemed to collapse in on itself, its hull folding like origami as the dark matter reactor went critical. The implosion created a brief, brilliant flash of light that lit up the entire battlefield. And then the chain reaction began. The destroyed ship's dark matter explosion sent a pulse of exotic energy through the Void Collective fleet. One by one, the enemy vessels began to lose power, their regenerative capabilities failing as their reactors overloaded. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before began to drift powerless, their dark hulls flickering and fading. It's working! Morrison shouted. The entire enemy fleet is going dark. But the Retribution had paid a terrible price for its success. The ship was heavily damaged, her engines offline, her hull breached in dozens of places. Emergency lights flickered on the bridge, and Sarah could smell smoke and ozone in the air. Damage report, she ordered. Hull breaches on 17 decks, reported Chief Rodriguez. Life support is holding, but we've lost main power. Emergency systems are operating at 40%. We're not going anywhere soon. Sarah nodded grimly. They had accomplished their mission, but at a cost. The Retribution was effectively out of the fight. But as she looked at the tactical display, she realized that might not matter. The Void Collective fleet was in full retreat, their remaining ships fleeing toward the edge of the system. The immediate threat to Zephyria Prime was over. All ships, this is Commander Chen, she announced. Begin search and rescue operations. Priority 1 is recovering survivors from damaged vessels. Priority 2 is assisting with the evacuation of Zephyria Prime. The next several hours were a blur of activity. The human and Zephyrian fleets worked together to evacuate the remaining civilian population from the planet's surface. The Void Collective had been driven off, but intelligence suggested they would return with reinforcements. Zephyria Prime would have to be abandoned. Sarah stood in the observation deck of the Retribution, watching the evacuation ships depart. Hundreds of thousands of refugees were being relocated to safer systems, their lives saved by the sacrifice of the Third Fleet. But the cost had been enormous. The Intrepid was a total loss, her crew evacuated just before the ship's reactor went critical. The Vigilant was badly damaged and would require months of repair. 3 other ships had suffered major casualties. Commander, came the voice of Admiral Kethvar over the communication system. I wanted to thank you personally. Your people have saved my world. Sarah turned to face the screen, seeing the Zephyrian Admiral's image projected on the bulkhead. We couldn't have done it without your help, Admiral. Your knowledge of the Void Collective's weaknesses made all the difference. Perhaps, Kethvar said. But it was human courage that carried the day. Your willingness to sacrifice everything for people you barely knew, that is something the Void Collective cannot understand or defeat. Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking about the cost of their victory. Admiral, we need to talk about what comes next. The Void Collective will return. They'll come back with more ships, better weapons. We need to be ready. Agreed. I propose a formal alliance between our peoples. Share technology, coordinate our defenses, build a fleet that can stand against the Void. I think that's an excellent idea, Sarah replied. But first, we need to get home and make our report. The human government needs to understand what we're facing. The journey back to Earth took 20 days. The Retribution limped home on auxiliary power, her hull patched with emergency repairs and her crew exhausted from the constant struggle to keep the ship functioning. But they made it, arriving at the Sol system to find a hero's welcome waiting for them. Admiral Kane was waiting in the docking bay when Sarah disembarked, his weathered face showing a mixture of relief and pride. Commander Chen, he said, offering her a crisp salute. Well done. The entire fleet is talking about what you accomplished out there. We lost good people, sir, Sarah replied. 43 dead, over 200 wounded. I'm not sure well done is the right phrase. Kane's expression softened. Sarah, you saved an entire star system. More than that, you've given us our first real victory against the Void Collective. That's worth celebrating. Sarah nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they had only won the opening battle of a much larger war. Sir, we need to talk about what we learned out there. The Void Collective isn't just another enemy. There's something else entirely. Something that threatens everything we know about life in the galaxy. Over the following weeks, Sarah found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. She testified before the Senate Defense Committee, briefed the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and worked with scientists to analyze the data they had gathered about Void Collective technology. The evidence was clear: humanity was facing an enemy unlike anything in recorded history. The Void Collective wasn't just a conquering force, they were a plague. Their ships were actually living organisms, grown rather than built, powered by dark matter reactors that could manipulate the very fabric of spacetime. Their goal wasn't conquest in the traditional sense, but conversion. They sought to transform all organic life into extensions of their collective consciousness, creating a galaxy-wide hive mind under their control. They're not evil in the way we understand evil, Sarah explained to the assembled senators. They don't hate us or want to destroy us out of malice. They simply see us as raw material to be processed and absorbed. To them, we're not individuals with rights and dreams and hopes, we're just resources to be consumed. Senator Martinez, the chairman of the Defense Committee, leaned forward. Commander, what are our chances of defeating them? Sarah was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Alone? We have no chance. The Void Collective has been conquering systems for decades. They have resources and technology we can barely comprehend. But if we work together, if we build an alliance with the surviving free worlds, we might have a fighting chance. What kind of alliance are we talking about? Total integration, Sarah replied. Shared technology, combined fleets, coordinated research and development. The Zephyrians have agreed to share their medical and energy technologies. The Altarians have defensive systems that could protect our worlds from starkiller weapons. The Vegans have manufacturing capabilities that could triple our shipbuilding capacity. Senator Rodriguez, a hawk from the Mars colonies, looked skeptical. Commander, you're talking about giving away our military secrets to alien governments. How do we know they won't use that knowledge against us someday? Because if we don't share it, there won't be a someday, Sarah replied bluntly. The Void Collective is coming. They'll finish off the Outer Rim worlds, then they'll move on to the core systems. And eventually, they'll come for Earth. Our only chance is to stand together. The debate raged for hours, but eventually, the senators voted to authorize the formation of the Galactic Defense Alliance. Sarah found herself promoted to admiral and placed in command of the new joint fleet that would be humanity's contribution to the alliance. But even as the politicians debated and the military prepared, Sarah knew that time was running out. Intelligence reports from the Outer Rim were getting darker by the day. The Void Collective was massing its forces, building new ships, preparing for a final assault that would either break the alliance or establish their dominance over the galaxy. The counterattack came 6 months later. Sarah was aboard the new flagship, the UES Defiance, when the alerts started coming in. The Void Collective had launched simultaneous attacks on 12 different systems, their fleets moving with coordinated precision that spoke of central planning and overwhelming force. Admiral, reported Captain Stevens, the Defiance's commanding officer, were receiving distress calls from Kepler 186, Wolf 359, and Gliese 667. All three systems are under attack by major Void Collective fleets. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The attacks were clearly coordinated, designed to stretch the alliance forces thin and prevent them from concentrating their defenses. But there was something else, something that made her stomach clench with fear. Captain, what's the status of the alliance fleet? We have 47 ships available for immediate deployment. Another 33 are en route from the outer colonies but won't arrive for at least 6 hours. Sarah felt her heart sink. Against 12 separate attacks, their forces would be spread impossibly thin. But they had to try. The alternative was to watch helplessly as the Void Collective rolled up the Alliance worlds one by one. Signal the fleet, she ordered. We're splitting into 4 task forces. Task Force Alpha will defend the Kepler system. Task Force Beta takes Wolf 359. Task Force Charlie handles Gliese 667. Task Force Delta will remain in reserve at the Sol system. Admiral, Captain Stevens said quietly, those fleets are going to be heavily outnumbered. We might be sending them to their deaths. I know, Sarah replied. But we don't have a choice. If we don't fight them out there, we'll be fighting them here. And if they reach Earth. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone on the bridge understood what was at stake. The battle for Wolf 359 was a nightmare of fire and death. Sarah led Task Force Beta personally, taking 12 ships against a Void Collective fleet of over 60 vessels. The enemy had learned from their previous encounters with human forces. Their ships now carried shield generators specifically designed to counter railgun attacks, and their weapons had been modified to overcome human armor. "They're adapting," reported Commander Park, now captain of the rebuilt destroyer Valiant. "Their shields are deflecting our main battery fire." "Then we'll have to get creative," Sarah replied. "All ships, switch to plasma weapons. Target their engine sections. If we can't destroy them, we'll cripple them." The battle raged for 8 hours. Human and Zephyrian ships fought with desperate courage against overwhelming odds, their crews knowing that the fate of entire worlds hung in the balance. Sarah watched ship after ship fall to the enemy's superior firepower, each loss a personal blow that she felt in her chest. But slowly, painfully, they began to turn the tide. The Alliance ships were individually superior to anything the Void Collective could field, and their crews were fighting with the fury of people defending their homes. When the dust finally settled, the Void Collective fleet had been driven off, but at a terrible cost. "Damage report," Sarah said, slumping in her command chair. "Task Force Beta is down to 7 operational ships," Captain Stevens reported. "We've lost the cruiser Intrepid II, the destroyer's Courage and Determination, and the frigate Resilience. Total casualties are significant." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of every life lost under her command. But they had won. Wolf 359 was safe, its 3 billion inhabitants saved from conversion by the Void Collective. Similar battles were being fought across the galaxy. The Alliance forces were holding, but just barely. Each victory came at a cost that left them weaker for the next engagement. Sarah realized that they were fighting a war of attrition they couldn't win. That's when the breakthrough came. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been working with Alliance scientists to study captured Void Collective technology. Her medical background gave her a unique perspective on the enemy's biomechanical ships, and she had made a discovery that changed everything. "They're not just machines," she explained to Sarah over a secure communication channel. "They're living organisms that have been converted by the Collective. And like all living things, they're vulnerable to biological warfare." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Elena, please tell me you're not suggesting we develop biological weapons." "Not exactly," Elena replied. "But I think we can create something that will disrupt their conversion process. A retrovirus that targets the specific genetic markers the Collective uses to control their converted organisms. It won't kill them, but it will free them from the Collective's control." "And what happens to the freed organisms?" "They'll revert to their original state. The ships will become inert, the converted populations will regain their individuality. It's not a weapon, it's a cure." Sarah thought about the implications. If Elena was right, they could potentially liberate entire fleets of converted ships, turning them against the Collective. But it would require getting close enough to deploy the retrovirus, and that meant another suicide mission. How do we deliver it? That's the tricky part. We need to get the virus directly into the Collective's central command structure. Their main fleet has a command ship, a massive vessel that coordinates all their other forces. If we can infect that ship, the virus will spread through their entire communication network. Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Elena, their main fleet has over 1,000 ships.